president, so this NFL team will follow my rules.
Go to your neighborhood.
Game day energy slammed into the stadium the second the gates opened, like somebody flipped a switch and never looked back. Fans poured inside shoulder to shoulder, jerseys stretched tight, faces painted, voices already cracked from yelling too early. Chants bounced off concrete walls and steel beams, mixing with bass from speakers and the smell of grilled food drifting in from the parking lots. It felt loud on purpose, chaotic by design, the kind of noise people paid good money to drown in. Security checkpoints lined the entrances in plain sight, impossible to ignore. Guards scanned tickets, waved wands, checked bags, and directed traffic with practiced confidence. Nothing about the setup was casual or negotiable. This was private stadium property, locked down tight, run by policies, radios, and people who did not care about anyone's personal opinions. Authority lived here, visible and unquestioned. Karen stood just past one of the checkpoints, immediately out of place. She wore a bright blazer that clashed hard with team colors and clutched a clipboard like it was a badge. She wasn't cheering, wasn't smiling, wasn't even pretending to have fun. She slowly scanned the crowd, eyes moving from chanting fans to security guards to posted signs, like she was doing an inspection instead of attending a game. Some fans paused to take photos under banners, others argued about parking, and a few kids tugged parents toward the team store. Ushers pointed directions while radios chirped non-stop. The whole scene felt controlled yet wild, like organized chaos done right. Karen watched all of it with narrowed eyes, clearly annoyed that nobody was asking permission. Her stance shifted again, feet planted wider, clipboard lifted higher, as if posture alone could summon obedience from thousands. Around her, cheers kept rising, drowning out any sense of control. The narrator clocks it instantly. This place runs on stadium rules, not HOA bylaws. Crowd noise is expected. Standing, shouting, celebrating is literally the point. Whatever power Karen carried back in her subdivision didn't make it past the parking gate. She took a few steps forward and stopped, watching a group of fans scream a chant loud enough to rattle the railings. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She adjusted her grip on the clipboard and tapped it once against her palm, impatient and annoyed. Fans streamed around her without noticing. Someone spilled beer and laughed it off. Another guy yelled trash talk at a rival jersey and got it right back. Security didn't react at all. This was normal. This was exactly what game day looked like. Karen's head snapped toward the noise. Her posture stiffened. She looked around again, slower now, as if measuring volume levels with her eyes. The chants grew louder as more fans poured in, layered over stadium music and booming announcements. Her expression tightened like she'd found a problem that needed fixing. She glanced at a posted conduct sign, then back at the crowd. Whatever conclusion formed in her head made sense only to her. Confidence didn't need permission. She stepped fully into the flow of fans and planted herself like she belonged there. A vendor shouted about hot dogs. Overhead screens flashed highlights. The place roared. Karen stood still, serious and rigid, clipboard angled outward now instead of tucked close. She looked less like a fan and more like a self-appointed hall monitor in the loudest building imaginable. Drop a comment where you're watching from, home, bar, or the stadium. Because everyone seeing this already knows where this is heading. Karen inhaled deeply, like someone about to lecture a quiet room, completely missing the fact that this space existed to be loud. She looked at the chanting fans again, then down at her clipboard, pen hovering like it was about to change something important. She heard the noise, and decided it violated something. Karen didn't hesitate once she decided the crowd itself was the problem. She stepped straight into an aisle between rows where fans were standing, chanting, high-fiving, and pointing toward the field. She lifted her clipboard like a stop sign and told people they needed to sit down immediately. Her voice cut through the noise just enough to confuse everyone nearby, not enough to command real respect. A couple fans laughed, thinking it was a joke or maybe some weird stadium skit. One guy grinned and shouted that this was football, not a library. Karen didn't crack a smile. She explained that standing in aisles violated community standards and disrupted shared enjoyment. The phrasing sounded ripped straight from an HOA email nobody ever finishes reading. She moved farther down the row and repeated herself, pointing at fans who stood during chants. She said crowd movement needed to remain orderly at all times. The logic made zero sense inside a stadium, but her confidence slowed reactions. A few fans sat down just to avoid the hassle, still laughing like this was harmless nonsense. Karen mistook laughter for compliance and leaned harder into it. She stacked words like courtesy, order, and compliance together until they sounded official. She claimed standing during plays interfered with predictable flow. Someone joked that the wave must be illegal too. Karen ignored the sarcasm and kept talking, her tone tightening as she felt control forming. Phones came out openly now. People weren't hiding it anymore. Karen noticed and said documentation worked both ways. That line drew louder laughs, but the mood shifted slightly. People realized she wasn't playing around, even if she looked ridiculous standing there with a clipboard at a packed NFL game. You've ever dealt with an HOA smash like? The narrator's aside fit perfectly because half the section already recognized the vibe. Karen kept going, telling fans they needed to remain seated unless entering or exiting their row. She said standing caused obstruction. The word obstruction landed heavier than expected. A fan asked who she worked for. Karen said she represented the community. Another fan asked which community. She brushed past the question and pointed at the aisle again, insisting it stay clear. The laughter thinned, replaced by eye rolls and muttered comments. The energy shifted from amused to irritated. She corrected a couple leaning into the aisle and warned that repeat behavior could be documented. That word changed everything. People stopped laughing. A few fans sat slowly, confused. Others stayed standing out of pure spite. Karen's posture stiffened as she sensed resistance and authority colliding. She flipped the clipboard open deliberately and scanned the section like she was counting offenses. The stadium noise swelled, chants rolling, drums pounding, but her focus narrowed. Her pen hovered over the page, ready to turn annoyance into records. Someone muttered that this was insane. Another said security would shut it down. Karen heard that and smiled thinly, saying standards applied whether people liked them or not. She said consistency mattered more than fun. That comment didn't land the way she expected. The power shift settled quietly. This wasn't a suggestion anymore. It felt like enforcement even if it was fake. Fans felt it and didn't know how to respond yet. Some sat. Some stared. Some filmed harder. Karen pointed at one last group standing during a chant and warned them they were being noted. Her pen finally touched paper, scratching fast and deliberate. The crowd noise swallowed the sound, but the message landed anyway. Then she started writing things down. Karen stopped pretending this was casual the moment her pen hit the clipboard. She planted her feet at the end of the row and began writing deliberately, not hiding it, not rushing it either. She angled the clipboard outward so people could see the page filling up. That visual alone shifted the energy because now it looked official, even if nobody knew what it meant. She announced she was documenting violations related to excessive cheering, prolonged standing, and blocked sightlines. Her voice stayed calm, almost bored, like she'd done this 100 times before. She warned that continued non-compliance could result in fines or reports being filed later. She didn't say who would issue them or where they'd go, which somehow made the threat feel heavier. Fans looked at each other, confused. A guy in a jersey laughed nervously and asked if she was serious. Karen didn't answer him. She just kept writing, nodding to herself like acknowledgement wasn't required. Phones came up immediately, no subtlety anymore. People wanted receipts for whatever this was turning into. She moved a few seats down and pointed at a group still standing during a chant. She wrote again, this time faster, muttering about repeat behavior. Someone shouted that it was a playoff atmosphere. Karen replied that atmosphere didn't override standards. That line landed wrong. The crowd noise didn't cover the irritation creeping in. She warned that obstructing views violated courtesy guidelines. A fan told her everyone stands at games. Karen said that didn't matter if it disrupted others. She scribbled another note, flipped the page, and continued. The act felt aggressive even without raised voices. Hit subscribe. This gets way worse. The narrator's aside fit perfectly because people watching could feel the slope getting steeper. Karen leaned into enforcement now, scanning for movement instead of watching the field. Every cheer looked like an offense to her. She documented someone waving a towel, claiming it blocked sightlines. She flagged another fan for stepping into the aisle during a chant. She warned a couple that continued behavior would be escalated. Escalated to what, nobody knew. The lack of clarity made it unsettling. Fans started talking back. Not shouting, just questioning. Karen ignored questions entirely, focusing only on writing. That silence felt louder than arguing. It told everyone she didn't care about pushback. She cared about control. Phones captured everything, her pen, her posture, the reactions. A few people booed her lightly. She wrote that down too, labeling it disruptive behavior. That crossed another line. People stopped laughing altogether. No security showed up. That absence mattered. It created a vacuum Karen happily filled. She straightened more, spoke sharper, and moved with purpose. The longer nobody stopped her, the more real her authority felt to people stuck dealing with it. She referenced fines again, saying repeated issues could carry consequences beyond the game. Someone muttered that this was insane. Karen smiled thinly and said accountability wasn't insanity. That comment spread through the section fast. She paused to review her notes, nodding like a supervisor approving a report. The game roared on behind her, but she turned her back to it entirely. Her focus was enforcement, not football. A fan asked where complaints could be filed. Karen said appropriate channels existed. That non-answer shut down conversation. She resumed writing, documenting reactions now, not just behavior. The power shift was obvious. This wasn't a joke anymore. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was someone actively enforcing rules that didn't exist, and nobody had stepped in yet to stop it. She capped her pen, tapped the clipboard once, and announced she would continue monitoring the section. That statement sealed the moment. The crowd didn't cheer or boo. They just stared. She wasn't pretending anymore. Karen escalated the moment she realized people weren't scared of the clipboard anymore. She stepped deeper into the row, closer to the center of the section, and raised her voice just enough to cut through the chants. She ordered fans to sit down during plays, saying standing created safety risks and disrupted the experience for others. The confidence in her tone suggested this wasn't a suggestion, even though nobody had agreed to anything. A group of fans stayed standing on purpose, arms crossed, daring her to do something. Karen pointed directly at them and repeated herself, slower this time like she was talking to kids. She claimed sudden movement could cause falls and that cheering while standing violated basic courtesy standards. That explanation landed like garbage. People started booing her loud enough to be obvious. She didn't back off. She told the booing fans that hostile reactions would be noted as well. That only fueled the noise. Someone shouted that it was an NFL game, not a town hall meeting. Karen responded that public gatherings still required order. That line flipped irritation into anger. Comment if you'd stand just to annoy her. The narrator's beat matched what was already happening in real time, because half the section stayed on their feet out of spite. Karen's jaw tightened. She moved down the row, telling people to sit during live action and stand only during breaks. She made it sound like a formal policy, even though nothing supported it. Fans argued back now, openly. One woman asked who made her the boss. Karen said authority came from responsibility. Another fan laughed and asked responsibility to who. Karen didn't answer. She just repeated the instruction and pointed at seats again. The boos got louder. Karen tried to talk over them, raising her voice higher than before. She claimed standing blocked views and created hazards in emergency situations. The word emergency felt ridiculous in context, but she used it anyway, leaning on fear to regain control. She flagged another group and wrote something quickly, saying repeated non-compliance would be escalated. That word again. Escalated how? Nobody knew. The lack of explanation made people uneasy. Phones kept recording. Someone yelled that security needed to handle this. Karen snapped back that she was handling it. That line marked a shift. She wasn't just enforcing rules anymore. She was positioning herself as the solution. Fans booed harder. A chant even started mocking her, rhythmic and loud. Karen stood her ground, glaring, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. She moved toward the aisle and blocked a couple trying to stand there during a chant. She told them to sit immediately or face consequences. One guy clapped sarcastically and sat, shaking his head. Another stayed standing and smiled at her. Karen wrote again. The atmosphere in the section changed completely. People weren't focused on the game anymore. They were watching her. Every time she spoke, the reaction grew stronger. Every note she wrote felt more aggressive. She was creating conflict faster than she could manage it. She claimed cheering itself was becoming the issue now, saying excessive volume encouraged standing behavior. That comment detonated the section. Booing turned personal. Someone yelled that she hated fun. Karen responded that fun didn't excuse disruption. The words sounded hollow even to her. She tried one last time to command the row, lifting the clipboard and telling everyone to sit during the next play. Nobody listened. The refusal was unified and loud. Karen looked around, realizing compliance wasn't coming easily anymore. Her authority didn't shrink. It hardened. She straightened, took a breath, and scanned the section with cold focus. The shift was clear. She'd decided cheering itself was the problem and she wasn't backing down. Karen didn't stay in the seating bowl once the boos stopped feeling funny to her. She pivoted toward the stairs and marched up into the concourse like she was transferring jurisdictions. The noise changed instantly. Instead of chants and crowd roars, it was vendors yelling orders, soda machines hissing, and lines snaking in every direction. The location shift gave her fresh confidence, like she just unlocked a new level. She planted herself near a concession stand where traffic bottlenecked and immediately started directing foot flow. She told fans to stay right, form single-file lines and stop cutting through gaps. Her clipboard came up again, tapping the air as she spoke. People slowed down, not because they agreed but because nobody expected someone in a blazer to start issuing directions inside a stadium. She claimed unmanaged movement created liability risks. That word landed heavy in the concourse, where spills and crowds already made people cautious. Karen leaned into it, saying congested walkways violated safety expectations. She told a group holding nachos to move aside because they were blocking flow. They stared at her, stunned, then shuffled away just to avoid drama. Karen escalated fast. She pointed at a family standing off to the side and said they needed to stand flush against the wall. She told a guy to stop walking against traffic. She said cue discipline mattered. The words sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced them in a mirror. Fans complied briefly out of confusion, not respect. She referenced crowd control standards, saying unmanaged lines could cause injuries. Someone asked who she worked for. Karen said she was overseeing compliance. That answer didn't clarify anything, but she delivered it with enough confidence to stall follow-up questions. Phones started recording again. The concourse made everything feel closer and more intense. Pause and guess what she does next. The viewer beat landed perfectly because Karen took it further immediately. She warned a vendor that their line extended too far into the walkway. The vendor laughed and ignored her. Karen wrote something down anyway. That crossed another boundary. Now she wasn't just directing fans. She was documenting operations. She told people to stop congregating near railings. She instructed a group to walk instead of stand. She claimed sudden stops increased collision risk. Every sentence added weight to her fake authority. Fans started muttering louder. Someone called her a hall monitor. Karen didn't react. She focused on enforcement. The concourse crowd grew restless. People wanted beer, food, bathrooms. She was slowing everything down. She mentioned liability again, this time saying accidents would reflect poorly on everyone involved. That phrasing hinted at consequences beyond the moment. It wasn't just annoying anymore. It felt threatening. This was the last non-official authority assertion forming. Karen stepped into the center of the walkway and told people to clear a path immediately. A few did. Others refused. She raised her voice slightly, enough to cut through ambient noise. That was new. That was escalation. A security guard across the concourse paused mid-step. Another leaned against a pillar and watched. Karen didn't notice yet. She was too busy telling a group to requi properly and warning that non-compliance could be reported. The word reported echoed. Fans looked around, searching for real authority. She flagged someone for walking against flow and wrote again. The pen scratched louder in the quieter concourse. People booed softly now, not like the stands but with irritation. Karen told them hostility would be noted. That comment made security's attention sharpen. She finally noticed eyes on her. She squared her shoulders and doubled down, saying she was maintaining order for everyone's safety. The confidence felt forced now. The crowd sensed it. The balance shifted. That's when security started watching. Security didn't rush in right away, and that delay meant everything. Two uniformed guards stood near a merchandise stand, arms crossed, eyes locked on Karen as she continued directing foot traffic like she owned the place. Their radios crackled quietly, short codes passing back and forth, not urgent yet, just alert. The presence alone changed the temperature in the concourse. Fans noticed before Karen did. People glanced past her shoulder, saw the uniforms and relaxed a little. Real authority was nearby now. The crowd stopped arguing with her and started watching her instead, curious how far she'd push it. Someone muttered that security would shut this down any second. Someone else whispered that she was about to get cooked. Karen finally clocked the guards. Her eyes flicked toward them, then back to the crowd. Instead of backing off, she straightened up and leaned harder into her role. She raised her voice slightly and said everyone needed to comply immediately because congestion was becoming a safety issue. The clipboard came up again, tighter grip this time. She pointed toward a choke point and told people to clear it. A few fans moved, more out of curiosity than obedience. Karen took that as validation. She said she was coordinating with stadium safety, even though she wasn't. That line crossed another invisible boundary. The guards exchanged a look but still didn't move. Radios crackled again. One guard adjusted his stance, clearly listening. Karen noticed and smirked faintly, like she'd just won something. She told a group to stop filming and focus on following instructions. That didn't work. Phone stayed up. The tension grew thicker. Fans started murmuring louder now, not yelling at Karen but talking about her. Someone said she thought she ran the place. Someone else said this was peak HOA energy. Karen ignored the commentary and focused on enforcement, writing another note and warning that repeated issues could escalate. If this was your section, what would you do? The viewer beat fit perfectly because people nearby were clearly deciding between staying quiet or pushing back. A guy with a soda stepped aside, shaking his head. A couple laughed nervously. Nobody stepped in to stop her yet. Karen glanced back at security again and raised her voice just a bit more, announcing that she was managing crowd flow under safety guidelines. That was new. That was bold. She didn't say whose guidelines. She didn't need to, apparently. The words sounded official enough to confuse people who didn't want trouble. One of the guards spoke briefly into his radio. Karen caught the movement and nodded like she'd expected it. She told fans to keep pathways clear and said non-compliance would be documented. The phrase felt heavier now that uniforms were watching. Fans sensed the shift. The argument wasn't between them and Karen anymore. It was between Karen and real authority that hadn't spoken yet. The waiting became uncomfortable. Every second stretched. The guards stayed put, observing, letting the situation develop. Karen doubled down again, stepping closer to the center of the concourse and directing traffic with sharper gestures. She told people to stop clustering near railings. She warned that sudden stops increased risk. Her words came faster now, less polished, more desperate. A fan muttered that she was digging her own hole. Karen shot him a look and said disrespect would be noted. The clipboard flicked open again. The pen scratched. That sound cut through the noise. Security didn't move, but their presence loomed. The crowd leaned toward them emotionally, waiting for intervention. Karen mistook the silence for approval. She lifted her chin and spoke louder, claiming coordination. That was the mistake forming. She thought security worked for her. Karen crossed the final line without even realizing it, and the moment felt heavy in the concourse. She raised her voice again, louder than before, and announced that she was protecting fans from unsafe conditions. She said unchecked movement, standing clusters, and crowd behavior created real danger. The words came out rehearsed, like she'd practiced this speech in her head for years waiting for an audience. She pointed around the concourse and said liability didn't disappear just because it was game day. She mentioned lawsuits, injuries, and responsibility, stacking each term like bricks in a wall. Fans stopped laughing completely. The joking energy evaporated. People weren't amused anymore, they were stunned someone would escalate this far. Karen claimed neighborhood impact mattered too, saying disorder inside the stadium reflected poorly on surrounding communities. That made no sense, but she delivered it with confidence. She said violations would be reported officially after the event. Officially where, she didn't explain. She didn't need to. The threat itself was the weapon. Security guards froze. Not because they were confused, but because they recognized the moment had shifted. This wasn't a misunderstanding or overzealous guest anymore. This was someone claiming authority she absolutely did not have. Radios went quiet for a beat, like everyone was waiting for confirmation before moving. Fans watched the guards closely now. Nobody argued with Karen anymore. Nobody complied either. The space filled with that awkward silence that only shows up when something has gone too far. A guy whispered that she'd lost her mind. Another shook his head slowly. Phones stayed raised, capturing every second. Karen mistook the silence for attention. She leaned into it, saying reports would include names, sections, and behaviors. She gestured vaguely toward her clipboard like it contained real power. She said accountability didn't stop at the gate. Her voice echoed off concrete, sharp and insistent. Yeah, this is where it ends. The narrator's beat landed perfectly because everyone could feel it. Security exchanged looks. One guard's hand hovered near his radio. Another shifted his stance, no longer relaxed. Karen noticed the movement and smiled thinly, assuming it meant agreement. She doubled down again, saying she was coordinating oversight for fan safety. That sentence hung in the air, completely unsupported. A fan laughed once, short and disbelieving, then stopped when nobody joined. The crowd understood something irreversible had just happened. Karen said she was authorized to report violations beyond the stadium. She didn't say how. She didn't say by whom. She just said it confidently, like confidence alone could make it true. That confidence finally cracked the illusion. Security didn't interrupt her yet, but their stillness was no longer neutral. It was controlled. Deliberate. The pause wasn't confusion anymore. It was preparation. Karen kept talking, unaware she'd reached the point where explaining more only made it worse. She pointed at the floor and told people to clear pathways immediately. Nobody moved. That refusal was quiet but absolute. Karen's jaw tightened. She raised her voice one more time and repeated herself, insisting she was acting in everyone's best interest. The guard's posture changed. Feet planted wider. Shoulders squared. Radios came up slightly. The balance of power shifted without a word spoken. Fans felt it instantly, like pressure dropping before a storm breaks. Karen finally noticed the difference. Her words slowed. She glanced at security again, confusion flickering across her face. For the first time, her authority didn't feel real even to her. The silence thickened, not awkward anymore but final. Nobody was waiting to see what Karen would do next. They were waiting to see what security would do. That's when pretending she mattered stopped being an option. The security supervisor didn't rush, and that alone shifted the balance. He walked in from the side of the concourse with an unbothered pace, hands relaxed, radio clipped to his vest, eyes already locked on Karen. The surrounding guards subtly repositioned without a word, forming space instead of a wall. Fans felt it immediately. This wasn't observation anymore. This was control. Karen noticed him halfway through another sentence about safety standards. She turned toward him like backup had arrived, shoulders straightening, chin lifting. Her clipboard came up again, ready. The supervisor stopped a few feet away, calm as a Sunday morning, and let the noise settle around them before speaking. He asked one question, simple and clean with zero edge to it. Did you work for the stadium? No accusation. No tone. Just a line drawn in plain English. Karen answered instantly, proud and loud enough for people nearby to hear. She said she was an HOA board member. The words came out rehearsed, like she expected applause or recognition. A couple fans snorted. Phones tilted closer. The supervisor nodded once, not impressed, not annoyed. He said the stadium operated under private event authority and city permitting. He explained that crowd movement, safety, and enforcement fell exclusively under stadium operations and licensed security. HOA rules didn't apply anywhere on the property. Not in the seats. Not in the concourse. Not at the gates. That explanation landed heavy. Fans relaxed visibly. A few people let out small laughs, relieved ones. The power shift was clear now. Karen wasn't being debated. She was being defined. Type, clipboard, if you know what's coming. The viewer beat fit perfectly because the ending felt obvious to everyone except Karen. She didn't back down. Instead, she argued. She said her authority came from community responsibility. She claimed safety didn't disappear because people bought tickets. She insisted oversight mattered when large crowds were involved. Her words sped up, overlapping themselves like volume could rebuild control. The supervisor didn't interrupt. He let her talk, which somehow made it worse for her. Every sentence stacked against her, exposing how thin her claim really was. He waited until she ran out of steam, then repeated calmly that she had no jurisdiction. None. Zero. Karen shook her head and said that wasn't accurate. She gestured at the crowd and said she was preventing problems before they happened. The confidence cracked just enough for people to notice. Her voice wasn't steady anymore. The supervisor's tone didn't change. He told her she needed to stop interfering immediately. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He just stated reality. Guards behind him shifted again, closer now, not aggressive, just present. Fans leaned back into the moment. Some smiled. Some whispered. The tension flipped from uncomfortable to satisfying. Karen looked around, searching for support, but nobody met her eyes. She tried one last argument, saying she'd already documented issues. The supervisor said documentation without authority meant nothing here. That line ended it. Cling. Final. Karen opened her mouth again, but the supervisor lifted a hand slightly, not to silence her, just to signal he was done listening. The authority was absolute now, undeniable. The concourse felt quieter, like everyone was holding a breath. Karen didn't realize it yet, but the argument was over. She'd lost the moment she answered that question. And she argued anyway. The supervisor didn't raise his voice when he gave the order, and that made it hit harder. He spoke clearly into his radio and said the unauthorized individual needed to be removed from the concourse immediately. The words unauthorized and removed carried real weight. This wasn't a warning. This was a decision. Karen reacted like the ground shifted under her feet. She started talking fast, saying there had been a misunderstanding, saying she was just trying to help. The supervisor turned slightly so the crowd could hear him and explained calmly that she had repeatedly interfered with crowd movement and operations. He said the stadium had zero tolerance for unauthorized enforcement during a live event. That public explanation mattered. Fans stopped whispering and started paying attention. The clarity snapped everything into place. Karen wasn't being singled out. She was being handled. Two guards stepped closer, one on each side, not touching her yet. The posture alone changed everything. Karen protested louder now, saying she hadn't hurt anyone and that people were overreacting. The supervisor didn't engage with the argument. He repeated that the decision was final. His tone stayed professional, almost boring, which somehow made it brutal. There was no drama left to feed on. The crowd reacted instantly. Cheers broke out, sharp and loud, echoing through the concourse. It wasn't mocking. It was relief. People clapped. Someone yelled thank you. Karen froze, clearly not expecting applause to be part of her exit. Subscribe if that cheer was deserved. The narrator's beat landed perfectly because the moment felt earned in every way. Karen looked around like she was searching for someone on her side, but nobody met her eyes. Phones followed her instead. The guards gently but firmly guided her forward. No grabbing. No struggle. Just steady movement toward the exit. Karen tried to keep talking, insisting she'd done nothing wrong, but her words faded under the crowd noise. Every step away from the seating area stripped more of her imagined authority. As they passed a concession stand, someone sarcastically asked if the clipboard needed to be confiscated. Karen clutched it tighter. That object had been her shield, and now it looked small and ridiculous. The guards didn't comment. They didn't need to. Fans parted easily to make room. A few people laughed. Others shook their heads. The tension that had hung over the area dissolved with every step she took. The concourse felt lighter, like air rushing back into a sealed room. Karen made one last attempt to appeal, saying she had a right to be there. The supervisor responded without stopping, saying ticket holders still had to follow stadium rules. That sentence closed the loop completely. Rights didn't equal control. They reached the exit corridor and the cheers faded behind them. The guards continued escorting her out of sight, calm and efficient. Karen's voice echoed once more, then disappeared entirely. Back in the concourse, something interesting happened. The noise dropped. Not awkward silence, but a collective exhale. People looked at each other and smiled. Conversations restarted. Laughter came back, natural this time. Someone said that was wild. Someone else said that was peak HOA behavior. A group replayed clips they'd recorded, already talking about posting them. The game noise rolled back in, reclaiming the space. Security returned to their posts like nothing had happened. Vendors resumed shouting orders. Lines flowed normally again. The disruption ended as cleanly as it began. The silence afterward hit different. The shift back to normal hit fast, like someone flipped a switch. Fans turned their bodies toward the field again, conversations snapping back into place mid-sentence. The game clock kept moving, the players lined up, and the roar surged back through the stadium like it had never left. Whatever tension Karen dragged into the building evaporated the second she disappeared down that corridor. Noise exploded in waves. Chants restarted, drums banged, and someone nearby yelled at a missed tackle like the interruption had never happened. The section felt unified again, bonded by the shared relief of having the nonsense shut down. People laughed, replaying clips on their phones, shaking their heads at how unreal it all had been. Security returned to neutral posture. Guards leaned back against walls, radios quiet, eyes scanning like normal. No tight formations. No hovering. Just background presence doing its job the right way. The supervisor was already gone, blending back into operations like he'd never stepped in at all. Vendors moved faster. Lines flowed clean. The concourse noise balanced itself out, that familiar stadium rhythm of footsteps, music, and yelling orders for nachos. The environment healed instantly once fake authority left the room. Fans settled back into their seats, standing again without hesitation. Nobody told them to sit. Nobody pointed. Nobody wrote anything down. The freedom felt louder than the cheers. Someone joked that the section should get a banner for surviving an HOA encounter. A replay hit the jumbotron and the entire stadium erupted. High fives flew. Beer spilled. Strangers hugged like best friends. The moment swallowed everything that came before it. Karen wasn't just gone physically. She was erased from relevance. People around the section compared notes. Someone said they thought it was a prank at first. Someone else said they knew it was bad the second the clipboard came out. A guy laughed and said that thing should be illegal in public places. The shared storytelling stitched the section tighter together. Down on the field, the home team made a big play, and the noise spiked again. This time it felt earned, clean, uninterrupted. Fans leaned forward, fully locked back into the game. The distraction was officially dead. Security didn't need to do anything else. That was the real sign it was over. When authority works, it disappears afterward. No lingering presence. No reminder. Just normalcy restored. People who'd filmed earlier started posting clips, already predicting comments would be wild. Someone said this was going to blow up online. Someone else said Karen was probably already calling someone who wouldn't answer. The jokes landed easy now. A wave started organically, sweeping across sections without anyone telling anyone what to do. It rolled perfectly, loud and chaotic and joyful. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Order didn't need enforcement. It happened naturally when control wasn't forced. Karen never came back. No second appearance. No argument. No appeal. She was done. The stadium had swallowed her and moved on like it always does. Like, comment and tell me, what would you have done? Sit quietly, stand louder, or film everything? The final whistle of the quarter blew and fans barely noticed. The game was back where it belonged, front and center. The crowd roared again, pure and uninterrupted. She tried enforcing HOA rules during an NFL game, and learned clipboards don't outrank stadium security.
Alright, now I want to hear from you. Do you think she was completely out of the line here? Or do you believe authority sometimes goes too far? Drop your take in comments, I read every single one.